All right, this is a, recap of NOI Advanced Data Training, um, and thinking about how we can use this at Nagasaki RCC and MIV. And I'm gonna be timing myself. Hopefully, it's in 15 minutes. I can put it on YouTube. So yeah, this is what I want to go over. First, what the training was about, and how it was spaced out, what were the contents of some of the training, really brief recap, and then my own analysis of how the workshops fold out. Let's see. So what workshops were there? So NOI consisted of pretty much 2 weeks. The first week, which was before the actual training, it was an online distance learning session. We connected via this webinar software and learned some basic things so that everyone would have oh, I need to restart the oops. Everyone would have basic common shared knowledge about some of the tools we're going to be using. So there was a basic standards of what data is, using the Catalyst service, using the VAN service, VAN program, and PDI, and then some focused use on Excel when managing data, and a basis of Access and MySQL. And after this, we had our training, and it was a little bit crazy, but it was fun. So the week started off with how do you do modeling for voter behavior, and some of these trainings were just for voters and so forth. Oh, I'll be let's see. I made this little chart that shows all our trainings, and I made some categorizations, and you can see the trainings in here. On bit.ly/yk-noi/sit. My internet is not working right now, but I'm going to put it up shortly afterwards. This little thing, so I can have a sense of what it's like. So modeling, and then how do you know that models actually work? Or like if your vendor brings you a model, how do you make it work? Once you have those models, how do you actually create? How do you target your voters? And then we had a workshop, and that was the first day. Second day, how do you space out the voter outreach work based on the models and based on what the data needs? Next, when you categorize data, how do you keep everything in order, well organized, so you're not confused about the data in the future? How do you run the hard reports and the soft reports? Yes, and making reports based on the data that comes out of the van, and then how do you make the reports more pretty? Oh, so I was gonna show some screenshots. So this is the data training, the basics of the data, and I don't have anything in particular here. I'm gonna restart the counter. Okay, and then this is Excel training, and again nothing too particular. We worked hands-on with Excel right away, and yeah, actually I invited Nicole to go through this, and she found it very useful. And then Access. Do we have anything in particular? Access was a little bit more heavy, and also there are some things that are kind of theoretic, especially understanding what the joins are. So that was Access, and then MySQL. You work a lot with these things that look like code, but it's much more simple. It's just instead of a GUI for precision, we are entering that what we want exactly in code. So a lot of the work learning in MySQL was learning the syntax. Well, first learning the theory, but then learning the syntax, and how do you write it properly, and what does it produce. Let's see. Going back to the calendar. So once you have these reports, how do you make it nice? So one example of that was this little Excel. that one of the groups produced during the practice, and it was interesting and a little bit confusing because there are so many colors, but the group was trying to make it pretty. But for most people, it was a little bit confusing. And the final result, after doing some juggling, the same group produced this revised spreadsheet and a little chart that makes the point of this model that was sold to them by a vendor was actually predicting voter behavior accurately, and the chart was trying to show that. So how to present your data in a convincing manner, when you're working with your organization, if you're going outside to a coalition and presenting your data, how do you make your best case? And then that was that. The third day, how to parse data. So a lot of times when dealing with voter data, we need to deal with this data that's in a PDF format. And then when you copy and paste into Excel, it's all broken out because the PDF doesn't use tables, or anyway, it's not compatible. So you're looking at that pile of data. Where is that? I can probably put an example. Looking at a pile of data and thinking, oh my god, how am I going to do this? And I guess before we had this training, we survived in our own ways. Some people just had volunteers sort through it. Some people used iMacros, I guess. I used a text editor and used some roles to do it, but when the file was very big, I just needed to let the computer do its thing, do a bunch of replacements for like an hour. So there are easier ways of doing this, and that's what we learned. So everyone found that very useful. I'm not finding the data. Yeah, not finding the data. In any case, oh, I think it's this. It's loading. Well, while it loads, oh shoot, 7-minute mark. We need to go back to the thing, and then dividing areas into and assigning to the organizers. And how do you do that? Because in Van normally we just divide turf, and you're done with that. But when you are dealing with like 100,000 voters and so forth, it's not that easy. So this is what I was talking about earlier about parsing. This is a PDF file that looked very pretty. And when you copy and paste into Excel, it's all messed up. I'm not sure where the original PDF file is, but oh, here it is. Yes, this is how it looked, very nice. But then when you copy and paste, it's all messed up, and you can't compute these results because there are numbers all over. So you can these are a bunch of formulas down here that will decide whether the row in which they are, what kind of row it is. So there's a bunch of ones and zeros going up back and forth depending on what kind of row it is. And the end result is this nice, sortable column. So yeah, I found that very useful. What else? Where all the files come from, what the sources are. And then fourth day, scripting. So all of us spend a lot of time doing things repetitive, especially if you use the Van, because Van is still in development and there are some rough edges, and when there are rough edges we just use human labor to go around it. And one of them is user creation. So using web scripts, particularly Firefox iMacro, to automate all of these tasks. And it can be used to automate a lot of things. So people found it very helpful. Oh, 9 minutes. And then we had this session about how to do GIS and maps and geocoding. And Thursday and Friday we divided into 8 teams, and each team worked on producing and doing the study, analyzing why and which voters do this practice called voting down or dropping off from the ballot. So normally they just go and vote for the president. They're like, yes, the president, and then they skip on everything else. And that really affects small races and proposition campaigns and so forth, because you think your base is going to turn out, and they do turn out, but they only vote for the president or the governor, and they don't pay attention to the other issues. So you get a low turnout for those particular propositions or campaigns. and there's some really interesting. Our group, we had a lot of trouble getting the data out, but there's some groups that did really stunning work. So I want to show that later. And we had a session about testing, how to do experiments, what does testing mean theoretically, and why should you do it? Because you want to do more effective work. And then we had a day dedicated to administrative work, and because we are working in campaigns and organizations, so how to manage the workload between your data work and your IT work, if you have that kind of issue, or your program work, or whatever it is. And then managing your team. How does it work well? So like all of these human resource kind of things that data people normally don't deal with. They are dealing with like computers and numbers and stuff like that. So that was a good way to thinking about that. And we had presentations about these projects. And I think I should just show one of the best projects. This was my favorite project. This was group 2, maybe, I think. And no, group 4. Yes, group 4. And they just did amazing presentation. There's the whole boat, whole ballot from Whole Foods, and really neat. There's some coloring issues, but very neat GIS analysis, neat regression analysis. They managed to crack through and get to the census tracks and compare with precincts. So that was great. Anyway. And we had RootsCamp, and we had 2 RootsCamp sessions. One were full RootsCamp sessions, but I participated in 2. And the first one was how do we use all this information with community organizations. So we had a lot of community organizations, labor unions, folks coming together and thinking, okay, how are we going to use it? 1 hour of brainstorming together, another hour of thinking, how are we going to and what do vote file managers deal with on a daily basis, and some best practice, some bad practices, and how to avoid those. Let's see. Going back to the spreadsheet, here we go. I think the rest of the agenda for this video is, yes, we are on time. We have 3 minutes left. Was the overview of this spreadsheet. So I'll show you this spreadsheet. I just to explain. So this is the different trainings we had. The one started Stripe Basics is the basic training we had the week before or online. So I am able to provide most of these trainings. I think it's easier for me to provide these trainings, the ones that are provided the week of, because for those the PowerPoint is there. Well, I don't have the PowerPoints yet, but I think we're gonna get a copy. NOI is working on that, and I just need to present. The basics is a little bit harder, interestingly, because there's no PowerPoint. You just need to do it. So in order for me to provide this training, I need to prepare a lot of material. So it involves prep work. But I think I can provide most of the trainings. I think I will be a little bit weak on Access on MySQL. I'm still a bit confused about the joint types, and because of that, I will be a little bit weak on dirty matching and GIS. Yeah. And I try to separate these areas into categories. So things that are like kind of skills are kind of universal. You can use it. You do it issue-based campaign. You're doing administration, whatever it is. You can use it. Those I classify as common. And then things that are election-specific, electoral work specific is electoral. And then there's some skills that are specific for certain kinds of data. So when we have data that's very large, 100,000 records, 10,000 records, I need to do something with it. And there's skills that are specific for that. So I classify a large list. And then there is that's like relational data that like a bunch of different tables that relate to each other, or there's stuff going on like that. I classify complex data, and then some data that's large and complex. So that's how. And then there's some sessions about how to come up with a strategy that's data-driven. So I classify it separately. So hopefully that makes sense. And then on how scary the information is, and basically how much code you have to deal with when you go through this training. So scary ones are you have to deal with a lot of code or it looks scary,